Hi everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Chartered Career Chat series by Chartered Accountants Ireland. My name is Sinead from the team, and I am talking to members about their chartered journeys. And I'm really excited because today we have Valarie Campion coming along to share her journey. Valarie, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Sinead. How are you?
I am good, and I'm delighted that you've come along and taken the time out to join us and share a bit about your journey, which I know is going to be interesting for everybody tuning in. So look, let's get stuck in. Valarie, what about we rewind and we start at the beginning? No place like the start. Give us a bit of a flavour of how you got into the profession. Where did it all begin?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, the idea of being an accountant was not something that I had been dreaming of as a young child. I think I'd always seen myself in something a bit more, like journalism or languages or something like that. So it was, I never even studied it for my leaving cert or anything. So I did economics and I did like history and German and French. And then I decided that I actually really, really enjoyed economics, which I hadn't done before. So I decided to pursue that in college. So I ended up going to Trinity because I'd always wanted to go to Trinity. And I went and I did business, economics and social studies, which is a 4-year degree, with, I guess, the idea of specializing in economics at the time. But then I would have taken accounting as one of my electives and really took to it, actually, really enjoyed it. Kind of like the problem solving element of it, how practical it is, and just started to do quite well at it. And then I think inevitably then when I got into my 4th year, the milk round started. And I'm not sure if they still call it the milk round, but that's what it was known as back then. And went along with a lot of my, college friends to all the various talks and everything. And, just thought the whole thing sounded like a really good deal. I certainly had been interested in going on to do a master's and specializing more in accounting. And then obviously with the training contract as well, I just thought it sounded like, it just really appealed to me. And I think as well, learning about all the different companies you could work for and the different industries. And I went in via audit. I just decided this was the path for me. And so then applied and was accepted by PwC Dublin. So I started there in 2005 after completing a Master's of Accounting in Smurfit. And then I was trained in the Consumer and Industrial Products and Services, as it was known at the time, divisions. That's all your semi-states, your multinationals, manufacturing companies, all of that. And I was there for 3.5 years. So that was kind of my start. So kind of, not that I fell into it, but it kind of evolved into it, I guess, as I sort of went to college. Just tried it as a subject, really liked it, and then it kind of snowballed from there when the opportunity to join a training firm came about. So so that's kind of how I got into it.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah.
And that was your training experience then in PwC in audit. And did you stay there, or what have you got up to in your chartered journey since? Fill me in, Valarie.
Yeah, so it's been a really interesting journey, actually. So I finished my training contract in 2009, and that was around the time of the recession. And also there was a big, a lot of us, when we finished, if we weren't going to stay on as and become audit managers and things, there was a lot of people who went off, went traveling, and I'm sure that still happens, right? And on to Australia, which was a big destination at the time. So I left in 2009 and I backpacked around South America for this long time ago now, for about 6 months before moving to Australia. So I ended up finding work very quickly when I got to Australia. There was a shortage of qualified chartered accountants at the time. And obviously with the international qualification, we were all very well positioned to get some really excellent contract work and then to stay on and get sponsored. So I ended up staying in Australia for nearly maybe 5.5 years, living and working in various finance roles, and was able to get kind of a good visa on the back of my chartered accountancy qualification as well. And basically have a great experience, a great life experience. So the roles I had there were very varied. I kind of started off in very much a management accountant role, doing balance sheet reconciliations, journals, audit, all that kind of stuff. And then my next role then was more kind of a bit of that, but then also a lot of FP&A, so kind of budgeting, forecasting, for a construction company. So I sort of pivoted a little bit. I kind of took my previous experience and then added some new. And I really like the FP&A side. So when I came back to Dublin then in kind of early 2015, I was able to, I got a really good role at CRH in their kind of divisional finance. And that was quite FP&A focused. It was a lot of strategic planning, 5-year plans, budgets, reforecasting, all of that, as well as with kind of month-end responsibilities too. But it was very much in the business, and it was a lot of travel into the operations and things. So I really, really enjoyed that. That was terrific. So that's where I was before Microsoft and how I kind of evolved. I'd say I always, every time I moved, I always took on something a little bit new. And that's kind of helped broaden my skill set out. And then when I moved to Microsoft, I was very much then kind of working alongside sales teams, helping drive sales forecasts, KPIs, all of that. And now I'm kind of supporting a kind of a pretty big strategic sales motion here in terms of building out reporting, and I've kind of done some work in data analytics and things. So I'm always looking to kind of push myself on and to try new things and keep my skill set fresh, I guess. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell.
Fantastic. I love that. And the variation, and as you say, the evolution of the skill set as you develop, and the international piece, because I often get asked, can you travel with the qualification? I'm like, absolutely. So here you are telling us firsthand how
I mean, it's
travel with.
I remember when I was in Smurfit, it's always stuck with me my first day in Smurfit. It was like big lecture hall, loads of people there, and we kind of had the big, the welcome to, your kind of accounting career, the start of it essentially. And they said that I remember that day, it was like, with this qualification, you can work anywhere in the world. You will have doors open to you wherever you go. And I was kind of going, oh, okay, like that's, of course they're going to say that, but I couldn't, like, it was so true. And I noticed it with my friends in Australia who had come from, health professions or were solicitors, that a lot of them had a lot of conversion exams to do, and they would have had to start kind of entry level and do their conversion exams and then kind of start working, or they'd be waiting for lots of paperwork, and it just took ages. But for us, it's an international qualification. No questions asked. You just went in, and you're getting really, really good roles very, very quickly, and very good companies, and some really, really super experience. So like when I worked in Melbourne, for example, we were kind of an Asia Pacific function. So I got to go to Korea with my job. I got to go to Singapore, and all these places that I never would have kind of thought that I would get to in a work capacity. So it's a fantastic qualification, and it really does. If you're looking to get international experience, there's no easier. It's not easy to get it, right? But there's no better qualification to have under your belt when you go looking for those opportunities.
And in addition to it being, I suppose, an international or travel passport, we see it very much as a business leadership.
Oh yeah.
Credential. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would completely agree with that. And I think it stretches back, I think, as far as your kind of training as well. Like I trained in audit, as I said, and I'm sure it's the same if you're in tax consultancy or in different areas. But any kind of client facing training it's incredible experience to get at such a relatively, early in career, I would say, stage. You're going out to different businesses, having to interact with CFOs and having to be that, especially as you develop, be that point of contact, knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to present yourself, working with partners. You get really incredible experience from a very early stage. And I think it just stands to you because you just then become very adaptable. You know how to get on with people, you know how to present yourself, you know how to be professional, and it's ingrained in you from a very, very early stage. And I think that just sets you up for success then from a leadership perspective. Just being in the room with these, very experienced people from, straight from the outset is just, I think it brings you to a different level, and it gives you that kind of maturity, I think, much, much earlier on. So it's definitely, from day one out of the blocks, you're kind of, I think, absorbing those kind of skills, and growing from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And would you say, Valarie, it has had an impact on your own career progression to date, having that qualification on your CV?
Oh, definitely. Oh, 100%, 100%. It is, as we said, globally recognized. It's very well respected. It is, it kind of catapults you into really getting really good experience really early on because it's such a strong brand. And to have that on your CV undoubtedly gives you great opportunities because it shows that you're committed, that you've got good training, that you've studied, that you've worked, you've got your work experience, you've completed exams, you're very determined. They're hard exams, there's no doubt about it. It is a very challenging thing to do. But and you've got that kind of mark of somebody who, as I said, has been dealing with senior leaders and who's been, reporting out on audits or, leading small teams or big teams or whatever, very early on. So it definitely 100%, it gives you all of those kind of things that people look for in job descriptions. You get the opportunity to gain that experience.
And what skills, if I could ask you, do you think are important within the profession? Often I get asked that by folk considering the profession. What skills do you need? Do you need to be a maths wizard, or what is it that's important? Or those even earlier in their journey would ask?
I don't think you have to be a maths wizard. I'm certainly not a maths wizard. I'd say I'd be quite analytical. You need a strong attention to detail. And they're kind of just basic, things. You probably want to, you kind of want to be a natural problem solver. I just find that I'm solving problems every day. Business, and as you get further on in career, they're kind of more business problems, and you're kind of bringing the financial angle to it. So it's super interesting. But you do have to have that. It's okay to identify problems, but you have to want to solve them as well. You need to have that mindset, I think, to really be successful. I think that's in general in any, maybe that applies to all careers, but I think particularly I found that I think soft skills are really important too. And I think being able to get on, I know this sounds so obvious, but just being able to get on with people, to interact with people, to read the social cues, to present yourself with with confidence, and all of that are all really, really important, because you're going to be managing stakeholders immediately, and they may not necessarily be financial. I'm working with a lot of engineering now, and a lot of like product managers and things. So it's a completely different language that you have to learn, and you have to kind of find common ground. So all that's super important as well. And I think an appetite for technology is good too. I think I wish that I had spent more time doing Excel. I know that sounds really, like, I think that's, if you can get really good at Excel and PowerPoint, things like that, like, and be able to present out your thoughts in a very kind of, user-friendly, understandable way using those tools, it can be very powerful. I took a course, I did the data analytics diploma, with Chartered Accountants Ireland last 2020. And I learned so much about, like, I know I work for Microsoft, right? But like, I didn't know how to do Power BI or kind of DAX or any of this kind of stuff. And it's really elevated me. I can feel it, that the stuff that I can work on. So I think it's good to have that appetite for learning and to try and use technology where you can in your role to make you better. So
absolutely, all valid points there. And often sometimes those soft skills are forgotten about,
yeah,
the likes of the communication skills, presentation
so important.
skills. It's so important as you, I suppose, develop through your career. So it's great to see you highlight those. Has anything, I suppose, Valarie, surprised you about having the credential, about your journey?
I think what surprised me is how transferable it is. So if I say, like, I kind of, if I look back at my career, I spent a lot of time, say, in property and construction in my, early days, in my role in Australia. And then I was in building materials when I was with CRH. And then I did a contract in Primark in their property team as well when I got back from Australia for a few months before I moved across to CRH. And I still wasn't pigeonholed, it was like I still was able to move into Microsoft, which is, cloud computing, it's software, it's something completely different. But because I had all of those skills that we've talked about already, through the analytical skills, problem solving, working with stakeholders from across the business, all of those things. And I guess the chartered accountancy qualification, that I was able to move. I was able to take those with me, even though it was a completely brand new industry. So I found the ability to move industry and not allow yourself to be pigeonholed. You can always move across. You take those skills with you, and you can go into any industry of any interest in. If you can find a role that that helps you, lets you highlight those things, that it's never a barrier to try something new, and you're equipped to do it based on the skills that you have. So that surprised me. I didn't think that I would move into tech. I thought, oh, I couldn't move into tech. Sure, I'm bricks and mortar. I'm manufacturing. I don't, but actually I found a really good kind of FP&A type role, business partnering role, where I could bring everything that I had done in my previous jobs into it. Now, obviously, there's a big learning curve. You have to be prepared for that whenever you move industry, but anything can be learned. It's not a barrier. And when you have the experience, it's much easier. So yeah, that surprised me that it was so doable.
I love that you're talking about that, because sometimes, again, there's a misconception, especially, folk who train in a particular sector. So some train in practice, some train in business, public sector, you name it. And maybe they think they can't jump in to other sectors, or even within those sectors, those, subsectors. But that's not the case at all. People, use the skills because they're so transferable, as you're rightly saying, and are able to move around, which is super.
Yeah, and it keeps things interesting too,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can have a refresh without having to change your life too significantly.
Yeah.
You can, move from a big company to a small company and vice versa, and all experience is valid, and all experience is something to talk about, and you learn from. So absolutely.
And I'm conscious of time, Valarie, and I suppose if I were to ask you one more thing, it would be, what would you say to someone considering this as a career path, or indeed someone who is early doors in their chartered journey? Would you recommend it?
I would recommend it. I absolutely would. I mean, the first few years are hard, for sure. But there's a lot of good parts to it too. Like it depends where you train or whatever, but I enjoyed, I trained obviously with a big intake of fellow, college grads, and we had a great time. Yeah, we were working hard, working long hours. We were driving the M50, we were driving here, there, and everywhere. We were out in all sorts of places, and it could be hard going, but there was a great sense of camaraderie. We made some great friendships, which I still have today. Met some great people. You get very well connected with people over time. People I trained with are in all different businesses now, and it's really great. So I think while it's a hard first few years, it's doable, and the kind of the rewards and the opportunities it presents afterwards I think are pretty limitless, really. I know that's in terms of what you can do and where you can go, and have and build a good career. So I definitely recommend it. I have no regrets about it whatsoever.
Well, what a note to end on, Valarie. Super. Thank you so much for coming along and sharing your journey, because there's so much in it there, and I've no doubt everybody tuning in will have lots to take away. So we really appreciate your time. So thank you very much for coming along. I hope you enjoyed having the chat today.
Yeah, no problem. It was lovely to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Tuning in. Until next time, we will see you soon.